Good afternoon, folks. Today is still April 30th, Wednesday. We're going to pick up S51 in a second, but before we do, just wanted to mention I had a sort of a housekeeping request from someone in relationship to H504. That's the Rutland City Charter change. Apparently, there's something in the statute that's not like alphabetized the way that they like to alphabetize things. So we're throwing that amendment in there. Hope that's okay with everyone. Let me know if it's not. We're voting on it tomorrow morning. Just didn't want to surprise anyone with that alphabet issue. And then again, tomorrow we're gonna pick up TIFs more and then doing more on Spark next week. If folks have recommendations on witnesses for that, please let me know sooner rather than later. Because once we have it, we're going to be sort of moving fairly tightly.
You mean chip?
On that. TIP, what did I say? That's what it used to be called, I think, in some version, right? I like to just call it DIFs because it helps me not have to remember all the other acronyms, but, okay, thank you. I did mean that.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, with that, Deputy Commissioner Samroff, would you like to join us?
Yes.
Thank you. So as you know, we have made some amendments to S51. And we're curious your thoughts on sort of the big package and then have some questions about implementing the veteran tax credit part.
Great. Well, I'm Rebecca Samroff, Deputy Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Taxes. Yeah, I came hopefully prepared enough to answer implementation questions with the understanding that the new credit is pretty new to the department. We're in the middle of a particularly busy moment in season, but we've done a little bit of thinking about it, and I'm happy to share and answer questions in this committee. But overall, I really appreciate the direction of the bill. I think the military retirement issue has gotten some really thoughtful attention this year, and the direction y'all are going with it makes a lot of sense.
Good.
Yeah.
So thoughts on implementing the veteran credit?
Yeah, so that's like the new fresh piece. I think the administration of that, like, definitely want to go deeper with our taxpayer services division, subject matter experts. But I will say that, you know, in administering any, you know, credit, we're looking at taxpayer ease as one factor, and then also just, you know, our administrative integrity is another, in balancing those. So the best option would be if there was some sort of data sharing or database that tax department could plug into that would have, you know, an updated list of veterans in our state. The key there is that we need to have some sort of identifier, because our matching is pretty poor if it's just like on name or name and address. So that's something, you know, we'll have to, you know, talk with the Office of Veterans Affairs, so I'm not sure what the Adjutant General, the subject matter experts in this space, to see if there's something available like that for us to plug into with the data sharing agreement. So we have some things to learn there, but that could definitely be used either on the front end as a tool for tax examiners when a credit request comes in, or it could be used on the back end in like a compliance process after the fact. And I will say that the department today doesn't have any credits that currently rely on like any credits or exemptions that rely on a taxpayer submitting anything upfront with that claim. So, you know, that's not like the easiest lift for taxpayers, and especially because so many go through a vendor process. You know, adding attachments there kind of like look different depending on which piece of software you use. So, you know, I think the best option would certainly be exploring data sharing options to help us administer this. But if not, we've also looked a little bit into what it means to kind of get like a paper documentation of your veteran status. It seems like it's pretty quick, you know, less than 5 clicks from the VA website. So if there was a step where we needed to follow up with folks for information, seems like that could be pretty straightforward for claimants.
I had a constituent who recently had to do that for a totally different reason.
Oh, good. Good. Well, that's great. Yeah, and when we ask if there's not a data sharing option for us, this will be, again, like more substantive discussion that, I just need a little more time for internally. But, it might be that we don't ask for an attachment for every claimant. It might be, when you're in our return review, like there could be maybe some other characteristics of a return that would put like a taxpayer's return in a bucket where we might request more information. Like, can you share the letter from the VA website, substantiating your status, for example. So if there isn't a data sharing agreement, there's kind of like different ways that we could use a document like that to support our administration of the credit.
It's not you, it's the wind. Can you wait 1 second? Yeah, Representative Hagan.
So I mentioned the other day, and this may be just a partial way to get at some of this, but I know veterans can, through their driver's license or applying for a license plate, have to show their DD 214. So if they have that, that may be one avenue to go to DMV to get that list. But and then wouldn't there be, if it was through your, through your taxes, it's just a simple, well, not, it couldn't be that simple, but somebody could get their DD 214 to present to your tax preparer to show that you were a veteran?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is totally an option. It's just like a little more lift than we have as like, upfront requirements for any of our current credits. So, but that would be like exactly the kind of conversations that, I want to go in depth on internally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yep.
And so you're talking about finding ways to determine whether these people are or are not really veterans. You're thinking there might be some attempts at fraud.
It's like always a possibility in the tax space, and it's a big part of our duties, making sure that state funds are being spent the way that you all intend them to be. So yeah,
I appreciate
yeah.
that.
I hate that that's a concern, but yeah.
I know, but I think we have to, so
Yeah.
I think you're right on. The other thing is I was talking during lunch with another member, next year or the year after, will the tax department have some kind of data accumulated by then to know how many of these folks are falling into each category? The below 25,000, the 25 to 120,000, and so forth. How many claim it, and that way we would know about costs and be able to keep track if we're still.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as, as long as we have kind of like our reporting thresholds for confidentiality considerations, as long as there's more than 10 filers in any group, we're always happy to provide aggregate statistics on that group. So I think, we would, with a credit like this, we would absolutely be able to show how many credit claimants are in, which slices of income, and share that information with Joint Fiscal Office as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then a question regarding how you would implement the exemption for the military retirement pay. Would the filing person just exempt that income, just not declare it? Or does it need to be declared and then exempted?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We administer something like this today. It's just capped at $10,000 only. So like, it's a matter of tweaking current practice right now, but that retirement income is all, there's like a paper trail for all that type of income. So that's kind of like our, all grouped into your federal taxable income and all things that we have data to support. Yeah.
So again, a couple of years later, you would be able to track how many people actually exempted that and the values.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. I really appreciate it.
Not my most thrilling testimony, but it's my favorite. Thanks so much.
Thanks for your support on this. Does anyone need to hear patent or the bolt on of anything new for us? Certainly, I could go through all 55 slides again if anyone's up for that. Okay, does anyone have any more questions? Okay, all set for a vote tomorrow?
Yes.
Great, okay. We're gonna take a 15-minute break then. Oh, sorry, yes, Representative Maslin.
A 15-minute break offline. I'd like to tell you all about a true story
S-117 that just got referred to us. It's a bill on unemployment compensation. The reporter of the bill from Commerce is on his way upstairs. Someone from JFO is finding their way back here. Senate budget's on the floor of the Senate, the budget's on the floor of Senate, so there's lots of JFO staff are there. But we're gonna see what we can get done now and see if maybe we'll vote if folks feel comfortable and we won't if folks don't, but either way, we'll get some work done. So. And I would like to welcome you to the Ways and Means Committee. I don't think you've ever been here
I have
before.
not, so.
Welcome.
So Sophie Zadatni for the Office of Legislative Counsel. And do I have your permission to share my?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
I'm just in a different role.
All right. Yeah, so it's a long bill. I'm going to try not to get too much in the weeds. So essentially, this bill started off as based on a request from the Department of Labor as technical corrections, primarily. So you'll see some of them are just very small tweaks, but just things to help smooth out, issues that have come up. And then in the House Commerce and Economic Development, they took some workers' compensation language that was in a different bill and included it in this bill that had come out of the Senate. So as if by way of background as to what this bill is about. Okay. Initially, there was some rules included in here on safety and health rulemaking to provide expedited process for rulemaking for the Vermont Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Those proposed rulemaking provisions have come out of the bill because the Secretary of State and the Department of Labor are going to continue working on that. There were some concerns about the expedited rulemaking process. So those have come out. And these ones, again, these are kind of technical corrections. So on the wage and hour side, this was just changed. So right now, if somebody, an employer fails to pay all the wages that are due to an employee, the commissioner of the Department of Labor can investigate. And the current language says that if the wages are willfully withheld, the commissioner may, charge a penalty. This is saying they shall make the employer pay an additional amount. And then this clarifies, this is the current practice, but this just clarifies that half of the additional amount that's recovered will be given to the employee whose wages were shorted, and one half goes to the commissioner to help, with enforcement actions. So the concern from the Department of Labor was that that the employee, may not get all of it. And they were trying to make this clear that the employee would get at least half of the recovered amount. This was a pro-employee change. I can make that clear. Again, just jump in if you have questions. Otherwise, I'll just keep going.
Thanks.
This was a tweak that was requested, and it's just when the minimum wage is calculated. It was just to make it clear that the calculation will be rounded to 1 decimal point. This was something that was requested by the technical folks over at the Department of Labor. There's this language that's currently in statute that has not been used that provides that the Department of Labor, the commissioner, has the authority to recommend a sub-minimum wage for individuals with disabilities, learners, and apprentices. And so when this bill came out of the Senate, it was to remove the language around individuals with disabilities, which would currently, if anyone were to do it, would be a violation of our equal pay provisions. But also it's not, this is a recommendation that would go to the federal government. They would issue a certificate to allow you to do that. Vermont has not done this. So this is really just cleanup. It's not something that's being used. And then on the House side, there was a question to the Department of Labor, are you using this for learners and apprentices? And they're not. So they don't believe this interferes with the ability regarding students, earning a lower wage, et cetera. So the proposal was to just remove this whole section out. There was originally a provision around the notice of potential layoffs, and that was to decrease the number of employees impacted by a layoff, a closing of a plant or whatever. And the Department of Labor has elected to withdraw that requested change. So that's just a deletion. Okay, so these unemployment compensation, I'm going to go through these next 8 sections really quickly. They're simply providing, as the Department of Labor has coming online its unemployment insurance modernized system, They now are going to have the ability to communicate with employers and with claimants electronically. The current statutes provide that everything be done by mail, but given everything is quite slow right now by mail, the next 8 sections simply provide the option for claimants and employers to be able to communicate with the Department of Labor and for the Department of Labor to communicate with them, but to do it electronically. So I'm just going to whistle through this. I don't want to give anybody seasick. Just going through it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, this section is deals with, this was an issue that apparently has come up where you have out-of-state entities coming in and purchasing, for example, a doctor's office here in Vermont, and then sort of manipulating the purchase of the new business to divide it into one or more pieces, but as a way to manipulate how much they're paying in terms of unemployment insurance. So this language here is intended to prevent, oh, maybe I haven't quite got to it yet. This just adds a provision to make it clear that if you do divide the business, that you have to designate one of the entities as being the one where all the employees will be located. The concern was that there was manipulation going on and that people weren't paying the right amount into the unemployment trust fund. This is just a recalculation. So right now, the highest benefit cost rate has a definition in statute. It doesn't align with how the federal Department of Labor calculates the highest benefit cost rate. So this is a tweak to make sure that Vermont is aligned with what the feds do and what most other states do. And this will enable the Department of Labor to actually be able to better utilize data coming out of the federal Department of Labor. They'll be more aligned with how everyone is doing these calculations. So again, my understanding is it's not going to make a big impact. It's just clarifying to make sure that we're interpreting it the correct way in Vermont. This again, technical correction here. So if somebody is partially employed, the goal in Vermont is to encourage people, if you've been laid off, you're unemployed, to at least work part-time. And as an incentive to do that, they disregard 50% of your earnings. So what this is saying is that they would round down. So this is actually, again, a pro-employee move rather than just rounding to the nearest dollar. You just always round down to the nearest dollar. So again, just a technical correction that had been requested. The short-time compensation program is currently in a dormant phase. This was a program, it's a federal unemployment insurance program. The challenge with it was that it was not possible for our Department of Labor to put this into place during COVID. It was hugely manual, and it was just overwhelming for them to be able to manage this with everything else that was going on during COVID. In addition to which, the bit we just talked about, the disregarded earnings, actually works better for most employees. It's sort of also, this is a program that encourages employers to keep employees on the books, but working reduced hours. So what this section is doing, it's currently in dormancy, is saying that it will no longer be dormant once the project to implement a modernized information technology system comes online, which is scheduled for next summer.
Next summer?
Yes,
Really?
2026.
That's amazing.
So
That's been happening like my entire time I've been serving. I'm really excited about it.
and so then these next couple of sections are just adjusting current session law that talks about that modernization system going into effect July 1 of 2025 and adjusting it to 2026 is the current plan, but when it will go live. So that's what these current sections are here. And again, just changing some of the effective dates that are in a 2022 session law. And then the last bit here is the workers' compensation. So these were the pieces that came out of S125 and were moved into this bill in House Commerce and Economic Development. So right now, medical case management is something that the insurance carrier for workers' compensation can request that a claimant receive. And it's a mechanism whereby, you can see the definition, whereby an injured employee has somebody that helps them go through the process, particularly if they've got a complex injury, they have a traumatic brain injury, or if they have challenges understanding complex information. And so right now, and the definition that you're looking at here, it comes directly out of the current workers' compensation rules. What the proposal is to make this available to claimants. So instead of it being dependent on the insurance carrier saying, yes, you can have medical case management, this would allow an individual claimant to say, or their attorney to say, I think I really need this medical case management. So this adds the definitions, the current rules into the statute. The medical case managers do not provide medical care or adjust claims. They really just act as that kind of third party to help somebody. I mean, they're hired by the insurance carrier, so, to be clear, but they're there to really help the employee navigate the system to make sure that they understand what the treatment options are that they're being offered.
Representative Holcomb?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Could you say that again? The medical manager is hired by the insurance company, but they're there to
Right,
help the employee?
right. So it's just an additional service that the insurance carrier can provide to an individual, to a claimant. If the insurance carrier is, you could have surgery, you could, these are the options available to you to treat this workers' compensation injury. This is someone that can then work with the employee to help, and their family, to help them understand what the options are to make sure they're making an informed choice. So again, they're not providing medical care, they're not adjusting the claims.
And this-
Interest though? I mean, isn't that a conflict of interest? I'm just thinking.
So our jurisdiction over this bill is the unemployment insurance
Okay,
trust
so-
fund parts. And we can hear briefly from Commerce when we're done hearing about the bill, but this section sort of outside of our
It's
jurisdiction.
an additional service. It's just to help individuals that may otherwise be, it's just an added resource for them. And then this just adds a section. So again, if you have an injured employee who doesn't speak English fluently, this requires the employer to pay for translation services, again, to make sure that the injured employee fully understands their rights and can participate in their recovery and their claims process. And then going back to the medical case management, this is just adding it in. It mimics the language that's currently used for benefits. So it's the same process that a claimant, in terms of a claimant requesting these services. It's the same provisions that are currently used for other, benefits. So if they go through the process, they seek authorization. If they're denied, there's an appeal process. So this is just replicating that language that's in the current statute, but now for the medical case management. And then at the end here, there was an issue that's been raised regarding late payment of average weekly wages. There was a report from the plaintiff's bar that injured claimants are not receiving their weekly payments on time. And so this looks to increase the penalties for late payments. So currently it's there's a penalty equal to the greater of $10 or 5% of the benefit amount. This now adds in a sort of escalating scale of penalties. So it's now 10% for the second payment that's late, and then 15% for any third payment or subsequent payment that's late. And then there was a concern around, there's really a lack of data around how big a problem this is. So House Commerce and Economic Development has added this language to the Senate's version of the bill, which is to basically have the Commissioner of Labor start tracking late payments. And so employers are going to be required every quarter to report to the Department of Labor how many times they've had to pay that penalty. And then the commissioner is going to put together a written report for the General Assembly in 2027. So this reporting would start in October of this year, and it would run for 1 year through to October of 26, and then the report would come to the General Assembly in 27 with recommendations. So first of all, analyzing what the data shows, and then recommendations regarding, whether they should continue to require the reporting or whether, the penalty should be, increased, maintained, etc. And then there's also an administrative penalty if an employer fails to make the quarterly reports. That is a quick whistle through.
That last part about the report, it's who the employer who's paying the late fee reports how often they're paying the late fee?
Right, so they would report to the Department of Labor that they've paid the penalty, the reason why it was late. and then what steps they're taking to
Oh, okay.
to prevent it from happening again, because there was some testimony around, you know, sometimes people are on an automatic payment schedule and then, you know, it's set for a certain number of weeks and then it sort of falls off or whatever. So it's really to try to get to why is it happening?
Thanks. Any questions from anyone? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there any fiscal impact to the state of this bill? Sir?
So Patrick Hitchin joined the fiscal office, I would say no, it's one of those instances where a technical corrections bill lives up to its name.
Thank you very much. And anyone, would you like to tell us anything from the Committee of Jurisdiction here?
Be happy to take chair.
Okay, absolutely.
Have any.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your quick response time on us picking this bill up. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
It's as advertised, yes. For the record, Dave Bosch, representative. I'm on the Commerce and Economic Development Committee. And yeah, as was presented, most of this is strictly correction stuff. The need for the report came about because we had an attorney or two representing claimants saying that it was a very frequent problem, and we had others representing the insuring interest saying, no, it wasn't, and nobody really knew. So we wanted to get some metrics on it. We tried not to make it too burdensome by putting the onus on the employers to do the self-reporting, and then DOL just has to pull it all together and report out once a year rather than, you know, keep doing it on a quarterly basis. And that way we will have some data and know how big the problem is. That was the thinking behind that.
Thanks. Did you identify yourself for the record and I missed it? You did? Great. Okay, I missed it. Sorry. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Nice to have a very simple bill. Understand there's no financial implications. I'm just curious about that one piece because I spoke with somebody whose employer referred them to that medical whatever, and that medical person said that they weren't eligible for unemployment compensation. And then when they went back to a different place because they clearly had an injury, the doctor said, of course you're eligible because you do have this injury. And I just wonder if that is provided by did you take testimony about whether the insurance company is in charge of evaluating
Now,
presence of a work-related injury? Does that create a conflict of interest?
the main thing we were trying to address is the service of case management, not so much tinkering with what's already out there in terms of disputes there might be, you know, is this really a valid claim or not? We were concerned about those who, as we heard some testimony, they're incapable of managing. They don't understand the medical processes and all that. So they do need case management and they shouldn't have to pay for it. It should be another service provided through the workers' compensation process.
So there doesn't seem to be anything for us to do. Do you know why the bill came here?
It came here because it impacts the unemployment insurance, like it touches the unemployment insurance trust fund, and anything that touches the unemployment insurance trust fund comes here. There's also the word fee floating about in the documents. And there was a third thing, but I don't remember what it was anymore.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed coming upstairs. Folks, are you comfortable voting on this today? Would folks rather wait for tomorrow? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion on S-117? Yes, Representative Holcomb.
What do we do? No, that we support it as presented to us.
Thank you. Representative Holcomb moves that we find S-117 favorable. Any discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, as Representative Burkhart, Representative Feltes,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb,
Yes.
Representative Kimball is absent. Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie,
Yes.
Representative Wazazak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
We have voted the bill favorable, 10-1, or 10-0-1, sorry.
Thank you. Can you report that, please?
Sure.
Thanks. And